Welcome back to Arc Tutorials. This is Angular 17 full tutorial series for absolute beginners. This tutorial is equally important, and especially if you are an existing developer who has worked on some Angular version previously, because there are some groundbreaking changes. You will see some files missing, especially the end-to-end files, etc., which I'll cover. So it's important to understand the fundamentals and the basics of Angular 17. In this episode, we will go over the folder structure and all the files that are included as part of the framework in the initial go. Let's get started. If you're new here, make sure that you go through the first 6 episodes in order to learn some of the basic stuffs and the foundational topics of Angular 17. In this episode, we will do a freestyle kind of a tutorial where I'll actually walk you through the code, the files, the folder structure, and make some notes for you. That being said, let's jump right into the code. Alright, so we are building a crew management system as part of Angular 17. So when you build a new Angular application, you would only have the application that you created. We created crew management as part of the initial installation. So if you missed that episode, make sure that you go through it. So once you have created the project, you would have the project folder, which is the root folder for you. Alright, so let me make some running notes for you. Folder structure and files. Alright, so first point you should understand is the parent folder will be the main project folder. This is where everything will be contained. Now once you expand that folder, this one, you would see .angular folder. Right now this you can ignore. Okay, you will not use this on a basis, development basis, etc. Ignore this folder for now. Okay, now once you ignore this one, .vs code is again something that you would see if you are using VS Code. Anything that you see with dot folder name, you can ignore them, because these are something that internally it will use to do caching, memory management, application management, etc. Next you would see node modules. Now again you can safely ignore this one, because this is where all the packages that you have installed will be located. Okay, will be installed here in this folder. Alright, now let me save this file for you. I already have a notes file for you, so let me add it here. Okay, so let's delete this one here. Alright, so like I said, node modules is where you will see all the packages that your project uses. You don't have to go through each file. Okay, remember that. You don't have to go through these folders or files unless you are actually making a change to a library or a package or something. Okay, unless, which is a very rare case, is to core libraries slash modules. Okay, so node modules is nothing but whenever you run npm install command, npm install or ng add command, you would see the packages here. Okay, so if you are following this series, we did installation of bootstrap, angular material. You can find those here. Okay, I'll give you a quick example and then we'll move on to the next. So if you see here, we installed bootstrap and bootstrap icons. Those two folders we can see here. Okay, that is nothing but those packages. All right, so that was node underscore modules. The next that you would see is editor config. Now this is specific to my configuration. Okay, if you see this again, it's a dot config, so you can ignore this file for now, because unless you want to make changes to a editor settings, okay, make your custom editor changes in this file. But again, don't do it if you are not an expert. If you don't know what you're doing, don't even touch them. Same way, dot git ignore. Now what this file does is I have initialized the git repository, so this will help me. This in I can make we can add folders and files that we need to ignore while committing. Okay, while committing your changes. Now this is especially helpful that you will add node underscore modules, etc. in this, right? So that you don't commit them in your repository while working. Even in working in real time, always have a .ignore file. Add the files and folders that you want to ignore while committing. Okay, so those changes will not be tracked. Okay, so like if you see here, only the files in the git changes will be displayed, not the node modules, because it's already added as a ignore file. Okay, you can see here .node modules. Alright, so that is .git ignore. Now comes the important, very important file, which is angular.json. Now what angular.json does is it would have all the configuration details, okay, of your Angular application. Now it will tell you that where are the node modules located, where is the schema located, what's the version number, what's the prefix that you want to add. Now when you generate a component or something, you can add a prefix like app, or if you say your um, let's say you want to do arc, whatever changes you want to make, it would come accordingly. All right, that is the prefix. Source root is the source root, leave it empty, that means it's the parent element. Schematics, you're building what kind of style you want to build your Angular component. There are different options. You can use CSS, you can use SCSS, you can use less, etc. Crew management is the project name. If you notice here, that's the name of the project and that's the configuration. If you have more than one project, you can add them inside this, and that's where the configurations will be displayed. Similarly, under architect, you would see build, serve, test, extract, and other options. Okay, these are the configurations that when you run ng serve, this is what will be the configuration that will be picked up. Okay, so default configuration is development. Okay, similarly, if you see the test, you would see that zone.js testing polyfills, icons, the source files, the TS spec, all of this will be picked up from here. Now again, when you go to build, you would see the build specifications that you want to see what should be the index file, where is it located, which is the main starting file, etc. Alright, so this file you would use and you would change only when you are trying to deploy it in pipeline. Okay, while deploying configurations, configuring your styles, JS, or for pipeline deployments. Okay, that's where you would use these files and you will find all the settings specific to your project. In some project, like I said, you want to have a different prefix, etc. All of those changes, different style, that's what you want to use, etc. will be in this particular file. Okay, that's angular.json. Now on a daily basis you will never change it, but every time you are deploying, you are making some configuration changes, you might want to look at this particular file. The next one on the list is package.json. This is where all the packages that are required for your project are listed under dependencies. You also have scripts, that is nothing but the ones that we run in the command line. Okay, we can add our custom ones also, and we can say arc build, and what it should do, it should run ng serve, and it should do json server hyphen watch db.json. You can configure your commands like this. Okay, so these are the scripts that we write and we tell them what to run. Okay, what when we run this command, what should happen? It should internally run this. That's what it means. Okay, you can add custom ones. I will show you as we move along. For now, I'll just leave it at this because at some point I'm going to bring in JSON server, so I've added it here. So to in short, package.json is the file where you will check the installed dependencies of the project. When we run npm install, which we did in the last two episodes, we installed the bootstrap framework and angular material. You can see the entries here. Alright, so you see angular material we installed bootstrap and bootstrap icons, so it's added in the package.json. So every time you add any packages, any modules to your project, that gets registered into package.json. Right, that's how it knows that when you do npm install, it will pick from this and install it. So when we run npm install inside project, the modules listed will be installed. Okay, whatever modules you have in package.json will be installed. That is your package.json. Now package lock is again a replica of your package.json, but at a granular level, which means you would see a lot of dev dependencies. You can see here each one, whatever dependencies they have, they will be resolved. But again, you don't make any changes to this. Okay, package lock.json. This has same details of package.json plus a lot of dev dependencies broken down in detail. Okay, so again, you will not touch this. Don't touch this manually. Okay, every time you update with package.json, this will be automatically resolved if you are using npm install and so on and so forth. Alright, so that is all about the high level root level. Now you will also see ts app config. These are the files that which tells you the TypeScript configuration. Okay, tsconfig.app.json tells you the TypeScript configuration for your project. Okay, now a quick look at it. It says extends, compile, where should the output go, what is the files, main files, what's the extension, it is .ts and those things. Okay, again, you don't change it, don't touch it on like for dev purpose. Okay, unless you are doing some changes or specific versions of TypeScript that you are doing, or unless you know what you're doing, don't touch this file. Same way, tspec would be the testing file. Okay, this is spec, that's why it says types jasmine, right? And here spec.ts, that means it will understand that this is for testing purpose. So tsconfig.spec.json, this has your TypeScript test specific configuration. Okay, test specific configuration. Of course, you have a readme, which is nothing but a file starting file where you can add details of documentation of your project. Right, like if you want to build something, you can add the inside the readme, you can add the documentation. Those are all the high level files that you would see when you open the project. Now you would see a main folder called source. This is your source code of project. Okay, the main source code of your project. Now expand this and you would see something called an app folder. Okay, now this is your application, your actual code of your project or application. Okay, this is the actual code. We'll come to it in just a bit, but before that, let me show you the other folders. Assets are nothing but what you, if you have static assets that you want to keep, let's say images, videos, or say JS static files, etc. All of that you can keep it inside the assets folder. Okay, by default there is nothing. Okay, but you can add them. So the way you will look at is you use this folder to serve the assets which are public. Okay, public as in anybody can access them. The next you have is the fav icon. Now this is the one that is often displayed in the browser browser icon bar. Okay, so if you see here, if you open any say google.com, you would see a fave icon, which is this one you see at the top. That's the fave icon, the one that you see for each specific application. Okay, that's called a fave icon. You can update it if you want. We know that Angular is a single page application. Angular is a single page application, which means there is only one HTML file, okay, which is index.html, this one. Okay, now if you open that particular file, if you open the file, you will not see anything except which says app root. Okay, this was added when we installed Angular material, which we did it in last two episodes. Otherwise you would only see app root, nothing else. But when you open in console and explore the source code, you would see all the component tree structure. We'll cover this later. For today, all you have to understand is that Angular is a single page application. There is only one HTML file. When we develop, when we build the app, the index.html will contain app root, which is the starting point of the project, okay, of the component, or you can say first component to be initialized. Okay, that is index.html. Now after that, immediately you would see main.ts. Okay, now if you see here, there is, it says bootstrap application, okay, and it says app component, right, and app config, and this is where it is going. So this is what starts your application. Main.ts is like entry point to your project. Okay, this is what you're telling, that bootstrap this application, the first component to load is app component. Okay, so this file tells you which is the which is the first which is the first component to be rendered in your project. Okay, so remember, first it comes to main.ts, then it goes and it will pick up app component, and that gets mapped into app root. That's how it will, the injection works. Okay, so remember the flow again. Main.ts will compile and say the first component to bootstrap is app component. Inside app component, the code will be compiled and that will be brought to index.html. Alright, that is the main file. So somebody, if in your interviews they ask you what's the first file that gets initialized in Angular, that's main.ts. That's how it knows which component has to be rendered and goes into index.html. The next file is the styles.scss. Now this can vary from project to project. Somewhere you would see .css, somewhere you can see .less, somewhere you can see .scss. These are all extensions of CSS. Okay, it can be different from project to project. In my case it is SCSS. These are like global styling for your project. All right, now whenever you want to write a generic piece of code which will be applied to throughout your framework, throughout your application, you will write it inside this particular file. These are, you can add global styles to this file. Okay, that is style.scss. Now let's go back to app folder. Again, if you have any questions so far, friends, feel free to reach out to me in the comment section. I'll be more than happy to help you. Now I'm expanding the app folder. Once you expand the app folder, by default you would see app.component, app.component, app.component. So think of it this way: every component in Angular has 4 files. Okay, has 4 files. One is a .html file, which is this one, app.component. The names could be different, but I'm just telling you the types of files that will be there. One will be .scss or .css or .less. That is your style, that is the CSS. This is your component template. This is the style. Then you have .spec.ts. This is your unit test file. The last would be .ts file, which is actually the component class or the logical piece of your component. Okay, so remember, every component will have these four files. .html, which is the template. Template is nothing but the HTML. Okay, so let me write it down, or template or HTML. You open style SCSS. This is where you will write all the styles that are required in your CSS. Okay, something like this. You will write the styling inside the CSS or SCSS or less, whichever extension you have used while initializing your project. The next is the spec file. Now if you look at it, these are the testing unit tests that are written for this particular component. The last is the app component.ts, which is again the first component that we'll talk. Okay, this is the actual component class, which has a directive component, and it is a class basically. We'll cover about components as we move along. For today, important things you have to know: each component has four files: HTML, CSS, spec, and TS file. Now let's talk about the app component. I'll go to the app component.ts file first. app.component.ts file. Now if you see here in app component.ts, you are giving a selector app root. Okay, now it should ring the bell because we saw this somewhere else also. Do you remember where? That's right. So if you see here, we mentioned selector as app root, and the same app root is mentioned in the index.html. You can see here. That's how all of this code goes inside the HTML dynamically as a single page application. Okay, so app component is the main component that is starting your application. Now this, if you open, you can see title, the same thing is mapped. This is the HTML which goes inside your index.html. Okay, here you would not see head, body, tag, anything, because it just gets injected inside the index.html, which has the head, meta, title, body, all of that. So you don't need to write those things again here, like doc type or header, body, etc. You will just write the code for that particular component. Alright, so that is app.component.html. CSS, I already showed you that it is used for writing the styles. The last is the app component.spec.ts. Now let's spend some time there to understand. App component.spec.ts. Now this is the unit testing. Okay, Angular used to have end-to-end testing. Okay, used to have, I said, because now it is no more supported, it is no more shipped with the Angular 17, or actually Angular 15 onwards. So there is no end-to-end framework now. There is only Jasmine framework, which is used for writing the unit tests, and there is Karma, which is a test runner. Okay, so when we type ng test, this is exactly what happens, that it will, the tests that are written in Jasmine will be executed, and it will use Karma test runner to run those test cases. Okay, that is what this file will contain. So this, I'll quickly show you an example. Alright, and I'm going to type ng test, and it says not found, so I go back to bash, and here I type ng test, and now you can see it will create the bundle, it will create the application, and it will compile the code, which is nothing but, and you see Karma runner opened, and it is saying that bootstrap class enabled to contain hello crew management. Okay, so it shows the test cases that failed, that passed. You can see here in the green it says 2 passed and 1 failed. But remember, Karma is a test runner, and Jasmine is the one the where you will write the unit tests. Okay, so remember that. These are the important things that you should know all about the Angular folder, Angular 17 folder structure end to end. Okay, now anything that you will change will have some impact somewhere. Okay, remember in the app. So it's extremely crucial to test, to build, and to make sure that the application is green and is good at all times. Okay, this is the first starting point for your learning, for your building Angular application. Make sure that when you install it, you go through these notes and understand each file that I have written here, and make sure that you are comfortable with each of these pieces, because in the next episode onwards we will deep dive into Angular CLI, components, modules, and much more. I have done I hope I have done a good work in explaining to you. If you think so, please let me know in the comment section. Also, please do show some love. Please do like these tutorials. Please do subscribe to my channel. Maybe leave a good comment to encourage me. Thank you so much. Let's keep the learning going. In the next episode, we will learn about Angular CLI. Thank you so much for joining. See you in the next episode.